I was in the middle of reviewing acquisition contracts when my phone vibrated across my mahogany desk. The screen lit up with Bella's name, and something cold gripped my chest. My granddaughter never called during work hours. She knew Tuesdays were my heaviest days, back-to-back meetings with the executive team about the 3-state expansion we'd been planning for 18 months. But I answered anyway. Maybe it was grandmother's intuition, or maybe it was the fact that she'd been distant for months now, canceling our lunch dates, avoiding family dinners, always with some excuse that felt hollow. "Bella? Sweetheart, what's wrong?" The sound that came through the phone wasn't a voice. It was a broken whisper, choked and desperate. "Grandma, I need you." My hand tightened around the phone. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "He hit me." The words were so quiet, I almost didn't hear them. "Dylan hit me. I was late with dinner because my client meeting ran over and he pushed me against the kitchen wall. He slapped me across the face, Grandma, and his father was right there. Harrison saw the whole thing and he just walked out of the room like nothing happened." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The papers in front of me blurred. The $47 million merger I'd been obsessing over for 3 weeks suddenly meant absolutely nothing. My Bella, my beautiful granddaughter with those bright green eyes who used to climb into my lap and tell me I was her hero, was being beaten by that pathetic excuse for a man she'd married 8 months ago. The rage that flooded through me wasn't something I'd allowed myself to feel in decades. I'd built my entire career on control, on keeping emotions locked down tight, on never letting anyone see me crack. But this was different. This was my granddaughter's voice, small and terrified, asking me for help. "Are you safe right now? Where is he?" Downstairs with his father, I locked myself in the bedroom. "Grandma, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. He's been getting worse and worse, and I thought maybe if I just tried harder, if I was a better wife—" "Stop." My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I needed her to hear me. "Bella, listen to me very carefully. None of this is your fault. Do you understand me? Not one single bit of it." I heard her start to cry, really cry, and it broke something inside me that I didn't know could still break. After Richard died 6 years ago, I'd thought I'd used up all my capacity for that kind of pain. I'd buried myself in work, in meetings and contracts and expansion plans, telling myself that was enough, that success was enough. I was wrong. "I'm coming to get you right now," I said, already closing my laptop and grabbing my purse from the bottom drawer. "Lock that door and don't open it for anyone until I get there. How far away are you?" "We're at Dylan's parents' house, about 35 minutes from downtown." "I'll be there in 25. I was already standing, throwing my blazer over my silk blouse. My assistant Jennifer knocked and opened the door, probably wondering why I was suddenly packing up at 2 in the afternoon. "Mrs. Thornfield, you have the board meeting at 3. "Cancel it." I didn't even look at her. "Cancel everything for the rest of the week. Family emergency." Jennifer's eyes widened. In the 12 years she'd worked for me, I'd never canceled a board meeting. I'd come in with the flu. I'd worked through Richard's funeral arrangements. I'd taken calls during my father's memorial service. But this was different. This was Bella. I grabbed my keys and headed for the elevator, my heels clicking against the polished floor. My phone was still pressed to my ear. "Bella, are you still there?" "Yes." Her voice was steadier now, but I could hear the fear underneath it. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I know you're busy. I just didn't know who else to call. Mom's in New York for that architecture conference and I couldn't—" "Don't you dare apologize to me." The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the parking garage. "You did exactly the right thing. I'm your grandmother. This is what I'm supposed to do." Even as I said it, guilt twisted in my stomach. Because the truth was, I hadn't been doing what I was supposed to do. Not for months. Maybe not for years. I'd seen the signs and ignored them. The way Bella had started dressing differently, trading her bright colors for muted grays and beiges. The way she'd stopped talking about her marketing job with the same enthusiasm. The way Dylan was always hovering, always controlling the conversation when I visited, always finding reasons why Bella couldn't meet me for lunch alone. My daughter Caroline had tried to tell me 3 weeks ago. We'd been having coffee in my apartment, and she'd looked at me with those serious eyes she'd inherited from her father. "Mom, something's wrong with Bella. She's not herself anymore." And what had I said? That Caroline was being dramatic, that newlyweds needed space to adjust, that Bella was fine, just busy with her career. I'd dismissed my own daughter's concerns because I was too wrapped up in quarterly reports and expansion strategies to pay attention to what was happening right in front of me, the same way I'd been too wrapped up to notice when Caroline needed me during her own crisis 10 years ago. The same way I'd been too absent to save my marriage before Richard's cancer diagnosis made everything else seem trivial. The same pattern, repeating over and over, because apparently I'd never learned. But I was paying attention now. I reached my car, a black Mercedes I'd bought myself last year after closing a deal that had taken 8 months to negotiate. I'd felt so proud of myself, like the car was proof that I'd made it, that all those years of sacrifice and 70-hour work weeks had been worth it. Now it just felt like a monument to my misplaced priorities. I started the engine and pulled out of the garage, merging into Boston traffic with more aggression than usual. Drivers honked. I didn't care. "Bella, I need you to text me the exact address, and keep your phone on. If anything changes, if he tries to get into that room, you call 911 immediately. Do you understand?" "Okay." She paused. "Grandma, I don't want to cause problems. Maybe I'm overreacting. Dylan's been stressed about work, and his father's been pressuring him about finding a better job and—" "Bella." I cut her off because I recognized what she was doing. I'd heard enough stories from the women's shelter where I served on the board. I'd read enough articles. This was what victims did. They made excuses for their abusers. They convinced themselves it was somehow their fault. There is no excuse for putting his hands on you. None. I don't care how stressed he is. I don't care what his father said to him. He hit you. That's all that matters. "I know. You're right. Her voice cracked. "I'm so ashamed, Grandma. I was so careful. I promised myself I'd never be like the women we talked about, the ones who stay with men who hurt them. And then somehow I became one of them anyway." Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. I needed to focus on driving, on getting to her. "You're not one of them. You called me. You asked for help. That takes more courage than you know." The truth was, she had more courage than I'd had at her age. When I was 24, I was already pregnant with Caroline, married to Richard, and throwing myself into building my career because I didn't know how to build a real emotional connection with another human being. My own mother had been the same way, distant, critical, always pushing me to achieve more, do more, be more, never just accepting me as I was. I'd sworn I wouldn't do that to Caroline. I'd sworn I'd be different, and then I'd gone ahead and replicated the exact same dynamic anyway. Caroline had grown up with a mother who was physically present, but emotionally absent, always at the office, always prioritizing the next deal over the next school play. By the time I realized what I'd done, she was already grown, and the damage was already baked in. But Bella had been my second chance. When she was born, I'd held her in the hospital and promised myself I'd do better. I'd be the grandmother I hadn't been able to be as a mother. For the first few years, I'd kept that promise. I took her to the park. I taught her to ride a bike. I showed up for her school events even when Caroline didn't expect me to. But somewhere along the way, I'd slipped back into old patterns. Work had consumed me again after Richard died. It was easier to lose myself in contracts and negotiations than to process grief. Easier to focus on expansion plans than on the fact that my husband's last words to me had been, "Maggie, you were never really here." He'd been right. And now my granddaughter was paying the price for my inability to be present for the people who mattered most. Well, that ended today. I hit the gas harder, weaving between cars with the kind of aggressive driving that would normally make me anxious. But right now, All I could think about was getting to Bella. The address she'd texted me was in a wealthy suburb, the kind of neighborhood where houses had 3-car garages and perfectly manicured lawns and homeowners associations that fined you if your grass was half an inch too tall. The kind of neighborhood where people liked to pretend that ugly things like domestic violence didn't happen. Where men like Dylan and his father could maintain their respectable facades while destroying the women in their lives behind closed doors. 23 minutes after hanging up with Bella, I pulled up in front of the Bennett house. It was exactly what I'd expected. A sprawling colonial with white pillars and a circular driveway, the kind of place that screamed old money and traditional values. Dylan's father, Harrison, was an ex-bank director, retired early at 59 after what he'd called philosophical differences with the board. I'd always suspected there was more to that story. I parked behind Dylan's BMW and sat in my car for just a moment, trying to collect myself. My hands were shaking. When was the last time my hands had shaken? I'd negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars without breaking a sweat. I'd given presentations to rooms full of hostile board members without so much as a tremor in my voice. But thinking about walking into that house, about confronting the man who'd hurt my granddaughter, made my whole body vibrate with barely contained rage. Good. Let them see it. Let them see exactly what happens when you mess with a woman who spent 40 years learning how to wield power. I got out of the car and walked up the stone pathway to the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open. Dylan stood there, and for half a second, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or fear. But then it was gone, replaced by that easy, charming smile he always wore. The smile that had fooled me for 8 months into thinking he was a decent man. Mrs. Thornfield. He said my name like we were old friends, like he hadn't just beaten my granddaughter in his parents' kitchen. This is unexpected. Bella didn't mention you were coming by. I looked at him, really looked at him. He was 26, tall and clean-cut in his business casual clothes, with that wholesome all-American look that probably charmed clients and colleagues. There wasn't a hair out of place, not a wrinkle in his shirt. You'd never know that less than an hour ago, he'd used those hands to hurt someone. Where's Bella? I didn't bother with pleasantries. His smile tightened just slightly. She's upstairs resting. We had a little disagreement earlier and she's... A disagreement. I repeated the word flatly. Is that what you're calling it? Look, Mrs. Thornfield, I understand that Bella might have called you, but this is really between husband and wife. These things happen in marriages. I'm sure you and Mr. Thornfield had your moments. Don't. The word came out like a whip crack. Don't you dare compare your abuse to my marriage, and don't try to minimize what you did by calling it a disagreement. His expression changed then. The charming mask slipped, just for a second, and I saw what was underneath. Cold eyes, a tight jaw. The real Dylan, the one Bella had been living with. I think you should leave. His voice was still controlled, but there was an edge to it now. This is a private family matter. You're absolutely right. It is a family matter, and Bella is my family. I stepped forward, and I had the satisfaction of seeing him step back. So you're going to get out of my way, and I'm going to go upstairs and check on my granddaughter. Unless you'd like me to call the police right now and have them do it instead. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to stop me. I could see him weighing his options, calculating whether he could physically prevent me from entering without causing a scene. But then a voice called from deeper in the house. Dylan? Who's at the door? Harrison Bennett appeared in the hallway behind his son, and I felt my anger spike even higher. This was the man who'd watched Dylan hurt Bella and done nothing. This was the man who'd taught his son that violence against women was acceptable. He was older than me by a year, with distinguished gray hair and the kind of patrician features that probably served him well during his banking career. He was wearing slacks and a polo shirt, the picture of a respectable retired executive enjoying a Tuesday afternoon at home. Margaret. He used my full name, which almost no one did. This is a surprise. I'm here for Bella. Something passed between father and son, some unspoken communication. Then Harrison smiled, and it was even more disturbing than Dylan's had been. Of course, but perhaps we could all sit down and discuss this like reasonable adults? I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. There's been no misunderstanding. I looked directly at him. You were there. You saw what happened. And you walked away. His smile didn't falter. I saw a young couple having a disagreement. These things happen. Marriage requires patience and understanding from both parties. The casual dismissal in his voice made my blood boil. This was exactly what Bella had said on the phone. He'd witnessed his son commit assault, and he'd simply left the room as if it was none of his business. I'm not going to stand here and debate this with you. I turned back to Dylan. Either you let me through right now, or I'm calling the police and reporting what happened. Your choice. You have 5 seconds. Dylan's jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists at his sides. For a moment, I wondered if he was going to hit me too. If he was that far gone, that controlled by his impulses and his need to dominate. But he wasn't quite that stupid. Not yet, anyway. Not in front of his father, in broad daylight, with a witness who had money and lawyers and the kind of connections that could destroy his life. He stepped aside. I walked past Dylan without another word, my heels clicking against the marble floor of the foyer. The house was exactly what I'd expected from people like the Bennetts. Expensive but cold, all gleaming surfaces and carefully curated artwork that screamed, "We have money and taste," without any actual warmth. It reminded me of the houses I'd visited during corporate dinners over the years. Homes that looked like they'd been staged for a magazine photo shoot rather than actually lived in. I took the stairs 2 at a time, something I hadn't done in years, my heart pounding as I reached the 2nd floor. There were 4 doors along the hallway. "Bella?" I called out. "Grandma?" Her voice came from the far end. "I'm in here." The door was locked. I heard the click of the mechanism, and then it opened. Bella stood there, and my heart shattered. Her left cheek was swollen, an angry red mark already darkening to purple. There were finger-shaped bruises on her upper arm, visible beneath the sleeve of her shirt. But worse than the physical marks was the look in her eyes, broken and ashamed, and so very young. I pulled her into my arms. She collapsed against me, sobbing in a way that told me she'd been holding it in for far too long. I held her tight, one hand on the back of her head, the other around her shoulders, and let her cry. Let her get it all out. "I've got you," I whispered. "I've got you, sweetheart. You're safe now." We stood like that for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red and swollen. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Grandma. Stop apologizing." I cupped her face gently, careful not to touch the bruise. "You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. Do you understand me?" She nodded, but I could see she didn't believe it. Not yet. That would take time. "We're leaving," I said. "Right now. Do you have a bag?" She looked around the guest room helplessly. "Some of my clothes are here, but most of my stuff is at the apartment." "We'll get it later. Right now I just need you to come with me. Can you do that?" She hesitated, and I saw the conflict in her eyes. Even now, even after everything, she was worried about causing a scene. About what Dylan would think. About what his parents would say. That's what abuse did. It rewired your brain until you were more concerned about your abuser's feelings than your own safety. "Bella," I took both her hands in mine. "Look at me. You are 24 years old. You have a degree from Boston University. You have a job that pays you $78,000 a year. You are smart and capable and strong. And right now, you need to walk out of this house with me. Everything else we'll figure out. But first, we leave. Okay?" She took a shaky breath and nodded. "Okay." I grabbed her purse from the dresser and her phone from the nightstand. Then I put my arm around her shoulders and guided her toward the door. As we walked down the hallway, I could hear voices downstairs, Dylan and Harrison talking in low tones, probably strategizing, probably planning their response. Let them plan. I'd been outmaneuvering men like them for 30 years. We descended the stairs, and both men were waiting at the bottom. Dylan's expression had shifted to something that might have passed for concern if I didn't know better. "Bella, honey, where are you going? Can't we just talk about this?" Bella's steps faltered. I felt her hesitate, her body tensing beside me. This was the moment they counted on, the moment when victims backed down, when they accepted the apology, when they gave their abusers another chance. "Keep walking," I said quietly, just for her. "Don't look at him. Just keep walking." "Bella, please." Dylan's voice took on a pleading quality. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was stressed about the Peterson account at work, and I just lost my temper for a second. It won't happen again. I promise." We reached the bottom of the stairs. I could feel Dylan's desperation growing, could see the calculation in Harrison's eyes as he watched his son's mask slip. "Mrs. Thornfield, surely you're not going to let one argument destroy a marriage." Harrison stepped forward, his tone reasonable and measured. "Young people need to learn how to work through conflicts. Running away isn't the solution." I stopped then, turning to face him directly. "You call what happened here an argument? You watched your son assault his wife, and you did nothing. You're not part of the solution, Mr. Bennett. You're part of the problem." His eyes went cold. "I think you're overreacting. This is between Dylan and Bella. You're making it into something it's not." "Am I?" I gestured to Bella's face, to the bruise that was darkening by the minute. "Is that makeup? Is that CGI? Or is that evidence of your son's violence?" Dylan's face flushed red. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to." "Save it." I cut him off. "Bella, we're leaving now." I moved toward the door, Bella beside me, and Dylan made the mistake of reaching out to grab her arm. His fingers had barely made contact when I reacted. I didn't think, I just moved. I grabbed his wrist and twisted it away from Bella with enough force to make him yelp. "Don't touch her." Each word came out like ice. For a second, genuine fear flickered across Dylan's face. He'd expected me to be the typical grandmother, soft, forgiving, easily manipulated. He hadn't expected someone who'd spent decades in boardrooms full of men who tried to intimidate her, who'd learned to project power and authority in every gesture. I released his wrist and opened the front door. Bella and I walked out into the afternoon sunlight, and I didn't look back. The drive to my apartment in downtown Boston took 40 minutes in traffic. Bella was quiet the whole way, staring out the window with her arms wrapped around herself. I let her have the silence, let her process. There would be time for talking later. My apartment was on the 20th floor of a building overlooking the harbor. I'd bought it after Richard died, needing a fresh start in a place that didn't echo with memories of our failing marriage and his long illness. It was all clean lines and modern furniture, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in floods of natural light. My refuge, my sanctuary. And now, Bella's too. I got her settled on the couch with a glass of water and an ice pack for her cheek. Then I sat down beside her and took her hand. "Talk to me. When did this start?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, the story came out. It had started small, about 3 months after the wedding. Dylan criticizing the way she dressed, commenting on her weight, questioning why she needed to go out with her friends from college. Little things that she'd dismissed as him being stressed about his new job. Then it escalated. He started checking her phone, demanding to know where she was at all times. Getting angry when she worked late, making her feel guilty for having a life outside their marriage. She'd pulled away from her friends because it was easier than dealing with his interrogations afterward. She'd started dressing more conservatively because it prevented arguments. She'd stopped mentioning me because he always found a way to twist it, to make it seem like I was interfering or that she loved me more than him. "When was the first time he hit you?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Bella's eyes filled with tears. 6 weeks ago. I was on the phone with Mom, and he got angry because I hadn't started dinner yet. He grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that he was just having a bad day. But then it happened again 2 weeks later, and again last week, and today. Today he'd escalated to hitting her in the face. That's how it worked. That's what I'd learned from the Women's Shelter Board meetings, from the statistics I'd read, from the experts I'd heard speak. Abuse followed patterns. It started with emotional control, moved to isolation, then to physical violence that gradually increased in frequency and severity. And the victims always made excuses, always believed it would get better, always thought they could fix it if they just tried harder, loved better, were more perfect. Why didn't you tell me? The question came out more hurt than I intended. Bella, why didn't you call me sooner? She looked down at her hands. Because I was ashamed, and because Dylan said things about you, about how you're cold and distant, about how you prioritized your career over Grandpa, about how he died lonely because you were never really there for him. And I started wondering if maybe he was right, if maybe I couldn't trust you to understand. The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they weren't true, they were, at least partially, but because Dylan had used my own failures as a weapon against my granddaughter. He'd isolated her by making her doubt the one person who might have helped her escape. Bella, listen to me. I waited until she met my eyes. Everything Dylan said about me? Some of it's true. I wasn't a perfect wife to your grandfather. I wasn't a perfect mother to your mom. I prioritized my career over my family more times than I can count, and I have to live with that. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean I won't do everything in my power to protect you. And it definitely doesn't mean you deserved what Dylan did to you. She started crying again, and I held her. This time I cried too. For her pain. For my failures. For the way patterns repeated themselves through generations. Caroline growing up feeling neglected, then overcompensating with Bella, who then ended up in an abusive marriage anyway, because trauma finds its way through family trees no matter how hard you try to prune it. But this time, we were going to break the pattern. This time, I wasn't going to be absent or distant or too focused on work to see what was right in front of me. This time, I was going to fix it. That first night, I slept on the couch in my living room while Bella took my bedroom. Every hour, I woke up and checked on her, making sure she was still there, still breathing, still safe. It was irrational. Dylan didn't know where I lived, didn't have access to this building, but rationality had nothing to do with the protective instinct that had taken over every part of me. The next morning, I called my assistant Jennifer before 7. I need you to clear my calendar for the next 2 weeks. Everything. Meetings, conference calls, all of it. There was a pause. Mrs. Thornfield, the merger presentation is scheduled for Friday. The board is expecting. Tell them I have a family emergency. Tell them whatever you need to tell them, but I'm not coming in. Another pause, longer this time. Is everything okay? Jennifer had worked for me for 12 years. She'd seen me come in with a fever of 102. She'd seen me take calls during my father's funeral. She'd never heard me cancel 2 weeks of work. No, I said honestly. It's not, but it will be. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen counter with my laptop and started researching. I'd served on the board of the Women's Shelter for 5 years, but I'd never really paid attention beyond writing checks and attending fundraising galas. Now I read everything I could find. Statistics on domestic violence, warning signs of abuse, legal options for victims, resources for survivors. The numbers were staggering. 1 in 4 women experienced severe physical violence by an intimate partner. Most abuse started within the first year of marriage or cohabitation. Financial control was one of the most common tactics, and the most dangerous time for a victim was when they tried to leave. That last fact made my blood run cold. Bella had left. She was safe now, in my apartment, but Dylan knew she was gone. He knew she'd told someone. Men like him didn't just accept that. They didn't let go of control easily. I needed help, professional help, legal help, the kind of help that would ensure Bella stayed safe and Dylan faced consequences for what he'd done. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Marcus Rivera. I'd met him at a charity function 3 years ago. He was a family law attorney who specialized in domestic violence cases, and he'd impressed me with his no-nonsense approach and his genuine anger at the way the system failed victims. He answered on the second ring. Marcus Rivera. Marcus, this is Margaret Thornfield. We met at the Harbor Lights Gala a few years ago. I need your help. Mrs. Thornfield, of course. What's going on? I told him everything. About Bella's call. About the bruises. About Dylan and Harrison and the casual way they'd dismissed violence as a marital disagreement. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when I finished, his voice was tight with controlled fury. How old is your granddaughter? 24. And she wants to leave him? She's committed to that? Yes. Good. Because I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Men like Dylan Bennett don't accept rejection well. When they lose control of their victim, they escalate. We need to move quickly and strategically. Tell me what to do. First, take photos of her injuries, detailed photos from multiple angles. Document everything. Second, I need her to file a police report today. I know that's hard, but it's essential for building a legal case. Third, we file for a restraining order immediately. And fourth, he paused. Fourth, you should know that this is going to be ugly. If Dylan comes from money, if his father has connections, they're going to fight back. They're going to try to paint Bella as unstable or vindictive. They're going to make this as difficult as possible. I'm not afraid of difficult, I said. I've been handling difficult men my entire career. I believe you. Can you bring Bella to my office this afternoon? 2 o'clock? We'll be there. When Bella woke up around 9, the bruise on her cheek had darkened to a deep purple. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and started crying again. I stood behind her, my hands on her shoulders, and met her eyes in the reflection. We're going to fix this, I said. I found a lawyer. His name is Marcus Rivera, and he's the best at what he does. We're meeting with him at 2. Grandma, I can't afford a lawyer. I have some savings, but not enough for... I'm paying for it. Don't argue with me on this. She turned to face me. I can't let you do that. This is my mess. I should... Bella! I took her face in my hands, gentle around the bruise. You're my granddaughter. You're my family. There is nothing I wouldn't do for you. Nothing. Do you understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. You just need to let me help you. Before we left for Marcus's office, I made Bella sit in the good light by the window while I took photos of her injuries with my phone. Close-ups of the bruise on her face, the finger marks on her arm, a smaller bruise on her shoulder that I hadn't noticed before. She hated every second of it. I could see the shame in her eyes, the way she wanted to hide, to cover up, to pretend none of this was happening. But we needed documentation, evidence, proof for when Dylan inevitably tried to deny it or minimize it or claim she'd somehow provoked him. My phone started ringing while we were in the car on the way to Marcus's office. Dylan's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. He called back immediately. I declined again. Then came the text messages. Mrs. Thornfield, please. I just want to talk to Bella. I need to apologize. I know I messed up. I'll do anything to make this right. Therapy, anger management, whatever it takes. Please don't turn her against me. I love her. I just lost control for a minute. I showed the messages to Bella. What do you want me to do? I can block him, or I can keep them as evidence. Keep them, she said quietly. Marcus might need them. More texts came through. They started getting more desperate, more manipulative. You're destroying our marriage. Bella would want to talk to me if you weren't poisoning her against me. You never liked me. You always thought she was too good for me. That last one was true. I'd had reservations about Dylan from the start, though I'd kept them to myself because Bella had seemed so happy. He'd been charming at family dinners, attentive to Bella, respectful to me, but there had been something off about him that I couldn't quite name. A possessiveness in the way he touched her, a tension in his smile when she talked about her work achievements. Small things that I'd dismissed as normal relationship dynamics. I should have trusted my instincts. Marcus's office was in a converted brownstone in Back Bay. His receptionist led us to a conference room where Marcus was waiting, early 50s, with graying hair and intelligent dark eyes that missed nothing. He shook my hand, then Bella's, his gaze taking in her bruised face with professional assessment. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing for us to sit. "I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you some hard questions, Bella. Are you okay with that?" Bella nodded. For the next hour, Marcus took her through everything. When the abuse started, what forms it took, whether there were witnesses, whether Dylan had ever threatened her life, whether she felt safe, whether she wanted to press charges. Bella answered everything, her voice getting stronger as she went. By the end, she was sitting up straighter, her hands no longer trembling. There was something powerful about naming what had happened to her, about having someone believe her without question or qualification. "Here's what I recommend," Marcus said, pulling out a legal pad. "First, we file a police report today. There's a detective I work with at the Boston PD who specializes in domestic violence cases. She's good, and she'll take this seriously. Second, we petition for an emergency restraining order. Given the photographic evidence and the escalating pattern of abuse, I'm confident we'll get it. Third, we start divorce proceedings immediately." Bella's eyes widened. "Divorce? I hadn't even thought that far ahead yet." "I understand, but you need to protect yourself legally. Right now, you're still married. That means Dylan has certain rights to your financial information, to make medical decisions for you if you're incapacitated, to potentially claim assets you acquire during the separation. We need to cut those ties as quickly as possible." "How long does a divorce take?" I asked. "In Massachusetts, with an uncontested divorce, minimum of 120 days. But this won't be uncontested. Dylan's going to fight. Based on what you've told me, he's not going to let go easily. We're looking at 6 months to a year, possibly longer if he drags it out." Bella looked overwhelmed. "I can't afford to fight him for a year. My salary is good, but not that good." "That's where I come in," I said. "Marcus, whatever this costs, send me the bills." "Grandma, I can't." "Yes, you can. Bella, I have $4.2 million in assets. I have a pension that pays me more per year than most people earn in a decade. I have real estate and investments and more money than I could possibly spend in my lifetime. What good is any of it if I can't use it to protect you?" She started crying again. Marcus pushed a box of tissues across the table, his expression sympathetic but professional. "There's one more thing we need to discuss," he said. "Mrs. Thornfield, you mentioned that Dylan's father witnessed the assault and did nothing. That's potentially relevant. If we can prove a pattern of enabling behavior, it strengthens our case that this wasn't an isolated incident." "How do we prove that?" I asked. "Testimony from Bella, documentation of any prior incidents that Harrison might have witnessed or been told about. And ideally, we'd find other victims. Ex-girlfriends, people Dylan went to school with, anyone who might have seen this side of him before." "I can help with that," I said. "I know someone who can dig into Dylan's background. Discreetly." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm not going to ask how." "Good." After the meeting, Bella filed a police report at the district station. Detective Sarah Chen, the officer Marcus had mentioned, was everything he'd promised. Professional, thorough, and clearly invested in getting justice for victims. She took Bella's statement, photographed her injuries, and explained the process for obtaining a restraining order. "I want you to know that this was brave," Detective Chen said to Bella as we were leaving. "Most victims don't report. Most stay silent because they're afraid or ashamed, or they don't think anyone will believe them. You did the right thing." In the car afterward, Bella was quiet. I could see her processing everything, the enormity of what she'd set in motion. "There's no going back now," she said finally. "No," I agreed. "There isn't. Do you regret it?" She thought about that for a moment. "No, I'm terrified, but I don't regret it." "Good." That evening, while Bella was taking a shower, I made a phone call to Robert Chen. Robert and I had crossed paths 5 years ago when I'd needed background checks on potential business partners for a major deal. He was ex-FBI, now running a private investigation firm that specialized in corporate due diligence. But he also did personal work for select clients. "Margaret," he answered. "It's been a while. I need your help. I need everything you can find on a man named Dylan Bennett, 26 years old, works as a financial analyst in Boston, and his father, Harrison Bennett, 59, retired bank director. I need to know if there are other victims, other incidents, anything that didn't make it into public records." "How fast do you need it?" "Yesterday." He laughed softly. "I'll have something for you in 48 hours. While I waited for Robert's report, Dylan's campaign of harassment escalated. He called my office 17 times in 2 days. He sent flowers to my apartment building. The doorman turned them away. He showed up at Bella's workplace, forcing her manager to call security to have him removed. And then came the lawyers. On Thursday morning, I received a certified letter from Bennett & Associates, a white-shoe law firm in downtown Boston. The letter informed me that I was unlawfully harboring Dylan's wife and interfering with a valid marriage. It threatened legal action if I didn't facilitate reconciliation between Dylan and Bella. I read the letter twice, then called Marcus. "They're threatening to sue me for harboring Bella." He laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "Of course they are. That's standard intimidation tactics. The letter means nothing. Bella is a grown adult who can live where she chooses. They have no legal standing." "So I ignore it?" "You forward it to me, and I'll respond. In the meantime, keep doing exactly what you're doing." But the harassment didn't stop. Dylan started calling Caroline, my daughter, who was still at her architecture conference in New York. She called me Friday afternoon, her voice tight with stress. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Dylan's been calling me nonstop, leaving messages about how you've kidnapped Bella and turned her against him. He sounds unhinged." I told her everything, the abuse, the bruises, the police report, the restraining order we'd filed for. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Jesus Christ," Caroline said finally. "I knew something was wrong. I told you something was wrong 3 weeks ago." "I know. You were right. I should have listened." Another pause. "How is she? How's Bella?" "She's surviving, day by day. She's scared, but she's also angry now. That's good. Anger is useful." "I'm coming home. I can get a flight out tonight." "Caroline, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. She's my daughter, Mom. And besides," her voice caught slightly, "besides, I know what this is like. I've been where she is." My heart stopped. "What?" "There's something I never told you. When I was in college, I dated someone who wasn't good to me. It wasn't as bad as what Bella's going through, but it was bad enough. And I never said anything because I didn't think you'd understand. You were always so strong, so in control. I thought you'd be disappointed in me for being weak." The words were a knife to the chest. "Caroline, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I made you feel like you couldn't tell me. It's not your fault. Or maybe it is, partly. I don't know. But we can't change the past. We can only deal with what's in front of us now. So I'm coming home, and we're going to help Bella get through this. Together." She arrived Saturday morning. When she walked into my apartment and saw Bella's face, she burst into tears. They held each other for a long time, my daughter and my granddaughter, and I stood to the side watching 3 generations of Thornfield women trying to break patterns that had been set in motion long before any of us were born. Robert's report arrived Saturday afternoon. 47 pages of information that made me feel physically ill. Dylan had a history. 3 complaints filed by ex-girlfriends during college, all of them alleging emotional abuse and 1 alleging physical assault. All 3 complaints had been quietly resolved by the university after pressure from Harrison, who'd been a major donor. The young women had been encouraged to withdraw their complaints in exchange for tuition assistance and confidential settlements. Harrison's record was even worse. He'd been forced into early retirement from his position as bank director after a junior female employee filed a sexual harassment complaint. The bank had paid her $340,000 to sign a non-disclosure agreement and drop the matter. There were 2 other complaints from earlier in his career that had been similarly resolved with money and silence. The Bennetts had a pattern: men who abused their power, men who hurt women, men who used money and influence to escape consequences. But they'd never gone up against someone like me before. I called Marcus. "I need to meet with you Monday morning. First thing, I have information that changes everything." "What kind of information?" "The kind that's going to destroy them." Monday morning at 9, I sat in Marcus's conference room with Robert's 47-page report spread across the table. Marcus read through it methodically, his expression growing darker with each page. When he finished, he looked up at me with something close to admiration. "Where did you get this?" "I have resources. The question is, can we use it?" He tapped his fingers on the report. "The college complaints were settled confidentially, but that doesn't make them inadmissible. It establishes a pattern of behavior. The harassment settlement for Harrison, that's public record once you know where to look. This is good, Margaret. This is very good." "So what's our next move?" "We use this as leverage. We let Dylan and his father know that we have documentation of their past behavior. And we make it clear that if they want to fight dirty, we can fight dirtier." I leaned back in my chair. "I want more than leverage, Marcus. I want consequences. These men have been buying their way out of accountability for decades. I want Dylan to face criminal charges for what he did to Bella. I want Harrison to answer for enabling him." Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Criminal charges are tricky in domestic violence cases. The burden of proof is high. We'd need Bella to testify, which would put her through hell. And even then, first-time offenders often get plea deals or suspended sentences." "So what are you saying? That there's no point in trying?" "No. I'm saying we need to be strategic. We use the threat of criminal charges to force Dylan into a divorce settlement that protects Bella completely. No assets, no alimony, no custody rights. We make him sign away every claim he has on her and her future. And we make sure he knows that if he ever contacts her again, we'll bring every bit of this evidence into a courtroom." It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. But it was practical. And I'd spent enough years in business to know when to accept the win you could get instead of holding out for the impossible. "Fine. Set up the meeting. There's one more thing." Marcus pulled out another folder. "The restraining order was approved this morning. Dylan is not allowed within 500 feet of Bella, her workplace, or your residence. If he violates it, he'll be arrested immediately." Some of the tension I'd been carrying since Tuesday released. "How long does it last?" 1 year, renewable. "But Margaret, you need to understand, restraining orders are just paper. They don't physically stop someone who's determined. You need to be careful. Bella needs to be careful." "I know." That afternoon, something happened that changed everything. I was at my apartment with Bella and Caroline, the 3 of us having lunch and trying to pretend everything was normal, when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. "Mrs. Thornfield?" The voice was female, nervous, uncertain. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Patricia Bennett, Harrison's wife, Dylan's mother. I need to talk to you." in person, alone. I stepped into my bedroom, closing the door behind me. Why would I meet with you? Because I have something you need to see, something that will help your granddaughter's case, but I can't talk about it over the phone. Please, I'm at a coffee shop on Newbury Street. I can wait as long as you need. Every instinct told me this was a trap, that Patricia was working with her husband and son to manipulate me somehow. But there was something in her voice, a desperation, a fear, that sounded genuine. Give me the address. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I told Caroline where I was going and why. She immediately insisted on coming with me. Mom, you can't meet this woman alone. What if it's some kind of setup? Then you'll know where I am and who I'm with, but I need to hear what she has to say. Patricia Bennett was sitting at a corner table when I arrived, wearing oversized sunglasses despite being indoors. She stood when she saw me, her movements nervous and uncertain. Up close, I could see she was around my age, maybe a year or two younger, with hair dyed an unnatural shade of brown and clothes that were expensive but outdated, as if she'd stopped paying attention to fashion sometime in the early 2000s. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I sat across from her, keeping my posture rigid and my expression neutral. You have 5 minutes to tell me why I'm here. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive, setting it on the table between us. Her hands were shaking. There are security cameras in our house, interior cameras. Harrison installed them years ago because he said he wanted to keep the house safe, but really it was about control, about watching me, about making sure I didn't do anything he didn't approve of. My heart started beating faster. What's on the drive? Videos, 19 of them, from the past 6 months. She took off her sunglasses, and I saw what I'd suspected, a fading bruise under her left eye, partially covered with makeup. Dylan hit Bella in our kitchen last Tuesday. Harrison was there. He watched it happen and walked away. But that wasn't the first time Dylan hurt her in our house. There are 3 other incidents on the cameras. I stared at the USB drive like it was a live grenade. Why are you giving this to me? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Because I've been married to Harrison for 35 years. 35 years of walking on eggshells, of making excuses, of believing that this was just how marriage worked. He told me that wives needed to support their husbands, that a good wife didn't question or complain or make trouble. And I believed him. God help me. I believed him for so long. She touched the bruise under her eye with trembling fingers. But when I saw Dylan doing to Bella what Harrison has done to me for decades, when I saw my son treating his wife the same way his father treats me, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I can't let another generation of women suffer like I've suffered. Does Harrison know you're here? No. He thinks I'm at my sister's in Providence for the week. He doesn't know I have access to the security footage. He's careful about so many things, but he never thought I'd be smart enough or brave enough to figure out how to download the videos. Her voice turned bitter. He's always underestimated me. That's the one advantage of being treated like you're stupid for 35 years. People stop watching what you do. I picked up the USB drive, feeling the weight of what it represented. Evidence, proof. The kind of documentation that couldn't be explained away or dismissed as he said, she said. What do you want in return for this? Patricia met my eyes. I want a divorce. I want out of my marriage. But I'm 57 years old, Mrs. Thornfield. I haven't worked in 3 decades. Harrison controls all our money, all our assets. If I try to leave him with nothing, he'll destroy me. He has lawyers and connections and money, and he'll drag me through court until I give up. She leaned forward, her voice urgent. But if you can help me, if you can use these videos to protect Bella and also help me get what I deserve after 35 years of marriage, then I'll testify. I'll go on record about everything Harrison has done. Every incident, every time he hurt me, every time he enabled Dylan. I'll burn it all down if you help me walk away with enough money to start over. I looked at this broken woman across from me. this survivor who'd finally found the courage to fight back. I thought about all the years she'd suffered in silence, all the chances she'd had to leave and didn't, all the ways she'd been complicit in the cycle that had eventually hurt my granddaughter. And I thought about how easy it would be to judge her, to condemn her for not acting sooner. But I'd spent the past week learning about domestic violence, about how it worked, about how it trapped women in cycles they couldn't see their way out of. Patricia Bennett was a victim too, even if she'd also been a bystander to her son's abuse. "Give me 24 hours, I said. "I need to talk to my lawyer. But if what you're telling me is true, if these videos show what you say they show, then yes, I'll help you." Patricia started crying. Not delicate tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from decades of pain finally being released. Other people in the coffee shop turned to look, but I didn't care. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time I'd ever touched her. "You're doing the right thing. It's late, but it's not too late." She squeezed my hand hard. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what my son did to your granddaughter. I'm sorry I didn't stop it sooner." "Stop it now," I said. "That's what matters. Stop it now and make sure it never happens to anyone else." I took the USB drive directly to Marcus's office. He cleared his afternoon schedule, and we spent 2 hours watching the videos in his conference room. Bella came with me. She needed to see them too, needed to understand the full scope of what we were dealing with. The first video was dated 4 months ago. Dylan and Bella were in the Bennett's kitchen. The audio was clear. Dylan was yelling at Bella about something trivial. She'd bought the wrong brand of coffee. The escalation was swift. One moment he was shouting, the next he'd grabbed her arm and shoved her against the counter. Harrison appeared in the doorway, watched for maybe 5 seconds, then turned and left. Bella's face went white watching it. I'd forgotten that one. Or maybe I made myself forget. The second video was from 3 months ago. Dylan slapping Bella across the face during an argument about her work schedule. Harrison visible in the background, reading his newspaper, not even looking up. The third was from 6 weeks ago. Dylan pushing Bella so hard she fell against a cabinet, a visible bruise forming on her shoulder. Harrison walking through the kitchen, pausing to tell his son, "Keep it down, your mother's trying to nap." And the fourth was from last Tuesday. The incident that had started everything. Dylan hitting Bella because dinner was late. The sound of the slap on the video made me flinch. Harrison watching, shaking his head, walking away. When the videos finished, Marcus sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at me and said, "This changes everything. This is felony assault caught on camera, multiple incidents. And we have evidence that Harrison not only witnessed, but tacitly approved. The prosecutor's office will love this." "What about Patricia?" I asked. "She wants a divorce. She wants out. Can we help her?" "Absolutely. These videos prove a pattern of domestic violence in that household, going back decades. She'll get a protective order immediately. And with Harrison's history, the harassment settlement, the enabling behavior, any judge will award her at least half of everything, probably more." Bella spoke up for the first time since we'd started watching. "Will I have to testify? In court?" Marcus turned to her. "Probably, yes, if this goes to trial. But Bella, with this evidence, I don't think it will go to trial. I think once Dylan and Harrison see what we have, they'll take whatever deal we offer them." "What kind of deal?" I asked. "Dylan pleads guilty to assault, accepts a criminal record, agrees to immediate divorce with no claims on any of Bella's assets or future earnings, including any children. He also agrees to a permanent restraining order and mandatory treatment. Harrison faces charges as an accessory unless he cooperates fully, which means he also gets divorced, Patricia gets her settlement, and both Bennett men stay far away from both women for the rest of their lives." It sounded almost too good to be true. "And if they refuse?" "Then we take all of this, the videos, Robert's report, Patricia's testimony, and we go nuclear, public trial, media coverage, their names and faces plastered across every news outlet in Boston. By the time we're done with them, nobody in this city will hire Dylan or do business with anything associated with the Bennett name. I smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Set up the meeting. The meeting happened 3 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, in a conference room at Marcus's office. Dylan arrived with 2 lawyers from Bennett and Associates. Harrison came with his own attorney, a slick corporate type who looked like he billed $800 an hour. I was already seated when they walked in, Marcus on my right, Bella on my left, and Caroline beside her. Patricia Bennett walked in last, without Harrison's knowledge. The look on Harrison's face when he saw his wife sitting with us was worth every dollar I'd spent on this case. "What is this?" Harrison's voice was cold. "Patricia, what are you doing?" She didn't answer him. She just sat down next to Caroline and folded her hands on the table. Dylan looked between his parents, confusion and anger warring on his face. "Dad, what's going on?" Marcus stood and connected his laptop to the large screen on the wall. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming. We have some things to show you before we discuss settlement terms." Settlement? One of Dylan's lawyers, a man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit, stood up. "My client has done nothing wrong. Your client abandoned her marriage and is being manipulated by—" "Sit down." Marcus's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Sit down and watch." He played the videos. All 4 of them. The room was completely silent except for the audio from the security footage. I watched Dylan's face drain of color. I watched Harrison's jaw clench tighter with each passing second. I watched the lawyers shift uncomfortably in their seats. When the videos ended, Marcus let the silence sit for a moment. Then he said, "Those are security camera recordings from the Bennett residence provided voluntarily by Mrs. Patricia Bennett. They show Dylan Bennett committing assault on 4 separate occasions over a 6-month period. They also show Harrison Bennett witnessing these assaults and doing nothing to stop them." Dylan's lawyer recovered first. "These videos were obtained illegally. They're inadmissible." "They were obtained by Mrs. Bennett from her own home security system, completely legal. And even if they weren't, we have enough here to ensure criminal charges get filed. Once the charges exist, the videos become evidence in a criminal investigation. Either way, they're seeing a courtroom." Marcus pulled out another folder. "We also have testimony from 3 of Dylan's ex-girlfriends from college, all documenting similar patterns of abuse. We have documentation of confidential settlements paid to make those complaints disappear. And we have records of Harrison's own forced retirement due to sexual harassment allegations, including the $340,000 settlement paid to his victim." Harrison's lawyer started to speak, but Marcus held up his hand. "I'm not finished. We have Detective Sarah Chen from the Boston PD Domestic Violence Unit ready to file criminal charges against Dylan for assault and against Harrison as an accessory. We have journalists from the Globe and the Herald who have expressed interest in running features on patterns of abuse in wealthy Boston families. And we have a civil lawsuit prepared that will name both of you, plus Bennett and Associates, for participating in a conspiracy to conceal domestic violence." He let that sink in for a moment. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to listen to our terms, and then you're going to accept them. Because if you don't, we're going to turn this into the biggest public scandal Boston has seen in the past decade." Dylan finally spoke, his voice shaking. "This is insane. Bella, honey, you know I love you. I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Tell them you don't want this." Bella stood up. She was trembling, but her voice was steady. "Dylan, you beat me, multiple times. You controlled every aspect of my life. You isolated me from my friends and family. You made me believe I was worthless without you." She paused. "I want a divorce. I want you out of my life permanently. And I want you to face consequences for what you did to me." "You're letting her poison you against me," Dylan said, pointing at me. "Your grandmother never liked me. She's always thought you were too good for me. This is her revenge." "This is justice," I said quietly. "There's a difference." Marcus spread papers across the table. Here are the terms. Dylan, you plead guilty to assault. You accept a criminal record. You agree to immediate divorce with absolutely no claim on any of Bella's assets, earnings, or future property. You agree to a permanent restraining order. You enroll in a court-supervised anger management and domestic violence offender program. You do not contest any of this. He turned to Harrison. You divorce Patricia immediately. She receives 60% of all marital assets, real estate, investments, retirement accounts, everything. You do not contest her claims of decades of abuse. You cooperate fully with any investigation into your son's behavior. And you accept a restraining order keeping you away from both Bella and Patricia. This is extortion, Harrison's lawyer said. No, Marcus replied calmly. Extortion would be if we demanded money. We're not asking for money. We're asking for safety and justice. You have 48 hours to accept these terms. After that, we file criminal charges and go public with everything. Dylan's face had gone from white to red. His hands were clenched into fists on the table. You can't do this. You can't just destroy my life because of a few arguments that got out of hand. Those weren't arguments, Bella said, her voice stronger now. Those were assaults. You hit me. You hurt me. You made me afraid in my own home. That's not a marriage. That's abuse. I'll fight this, Dylan said, looking directly at me. I'll fight you. You think having money makes you powerful? My father has connections all over this city. Your father, I interrupted, is about to lose everything. His reputation, his marriage, his standing in a community that values respectability above all else. Every board he sits on, every club he belongs to, every business relationship he has, all of it will disappear once people know what kind of man he really is. I leaned forward. You see, Dylan, I've spent 40 years in rooms full of men who thought they were untouchable. Men who believed their money and their connections made them immune to consequences. And I've watched them fall, one by one, when they finally pushed too far. You pushed too far when you put your hands on my granddaughter. Harrison stood abruptly. Patricia, we're leaving. Stop this nonsense and let's go home. Patricia didn't move. She looked up at her husband, and I saw 35 years of fear and submission finally breaking. No, I'm not going home. I'm not going anywhere with you ever again. I'm filing for divorce, Harrison. I'm testifying against you and our son, and I'm taking everything you tried to keep from me. You have nothing without me, Harrison hissed. You're 57 years old with no job skills and no money of your own. You'll be working minimum wage in a year. Actually, Marcus said, she'll be living off the $7 million in assets she's entitled to from your marriage. Plus her half of the house in Brookline, which is worth another $2 million. And she'll be doing it without anyone hitting her or controlling her or making her feel worthless. Harrison's face went purple. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to hit someone, his wife, his lawyer, maybe even me. But he had just enough self-control left to stop himself. He turned to his attorney. Get me out of this. I'm paying you $500 an hour. Do your job. His lawyer looked at the evidence spread across the table, at the videos paused on the screen, at Patricia sitting with us instead of with her husband. Then he looked at Harrison and said, I can't. They have everything. If you fight this, you'll lose. Badly. Take the deal. I won't. Take the deal. The lawyer's voice was firm. Because if you don't, criminal charges are the least of your problems. Your son is on video committing assault. You're on video witnessing it. No jury in the world will side with you. You'll lose in court, lose in public opinion, and probably lose a lot more than 60% of your assets when Patricia's lawyers get done with you. The fight went out of Harrison then. I watched him deflate, shoulders sagging, the mask of control finally cracking. He'd spent decades wielding power over the women in his life, and now that power was gone. The women had banded together, had gathered evidence, had brought in lawyers and investigators and police, and he couldn't buy his way out of it this time. Dylan was still trying. Bella, please, just talk to me, without all these people around. Give me a chance to explain. No, Bella said. There's nothing to explain. I saw the videos, Dylan. I watched you hit me over and over. I watched your father ignore it. I can't believe I convinced myself those incidents weren't as bad as they were. But I see it clearly now. You hurt me. Deliberately. Repeatedly. And you would have kept doing it. I can change. I'll get help. I'll do therapy. Whatever you want. I don't want anything from you anymore. I just want you gone from my life. Marcus put a pen on top of the papers. 48 hours, gentlemen. Sign these agreements, or we go to war. And trust me, you don't want that war. Dylan's lawyers conferred in whispers. Harrison sat frozen, staring at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. Patricia stared back, and there was no fear in her eyes anymore. Just resolution. Finally, Dylan's senior lawyer spoke. We need time to review these terms with our clients. You have 48 hours, Marcus repeated. After that, the offer is off the table and we pursue maximum legal action. As everyone stood to leave, Dylan made one last attempt. He moved toward Bella, reaching out. Baby, please. I stepped between them. The restraining order is in effect. You're not allowed within 500 feet of her. Touch her, and I'll have the police here in 3 minutes. He looked at me with pure hatred. You did this. You destroyed everything. No, I said calmly. You did this. You beat your wife and thought there wouldn't be consequences. You thought being a man meant you could control and hurt the woman you claimed to love. You were wrong. And now you're learning what happens when women stop accepting that behavior. Security escorted Dylan and his lawyers out. Harrison and his attorney left separately. Only Patricia remained behind with us. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she said to me. Thank you for helping me find the courage to do this. You found the courage yourself, I told her. You're the one who brought us the evidence. You're the one who chose to testify. All I did was provide support. It's more than that. You showed me that there was another way, that I didn't have to accept what Harrison told me was normal. She looked at Bella. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you from my son. I should have stopped it the first time. I should have... You're stopping it now, Bella said quietly. That matters. It's late, but it's not too late. 46 hours later, both Bennett men signed the agreements. Dylan pled guilty to assault and accepted all divorce terms. Harrison agreed to the divorce settlement and the restraining orders. Neither of them fought. Neither of them argued. They knew they were beaten. The day the divorce was finalized, Bella and I sat in my apartment watching the sunset over Boston Harbor. She was holding a glass of wine, her first in months. The bruise on her face had finally faded completely. It's over, she said softly. It's really over. Yes, I agreed. It's over. I keep thinking I should feel happy or relieved, but mostly I just feel tired. That's normal. You've been surviving on adrenaline and fear for months. Now that the immediate threat is gone, your body and mind need time to recover. She was quiet for a moment. Grandma, can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you do all this? I mean, I'm grateful, but the lawyer fees alone must have been hundreds of thousands of dollars. The investigator, the time off work. You basically put your entire life on hold for me. I looked at my granddaughter, this strong, resilient young woman who'd survived something that would have broken many people. Because you're my family. Because I failed your mother when she needed me. And I wasn't going to fail you, too. And because... I paused, choosing my words carefully. Because for too many years, I told myself that success meant money and titles and professional achievements. But the truth is, none of that matters if you can't protect the people you love. Bella started crying. I held her, and we sat there watching the sun disappear behind the buildings, two women who'd survived, who'd fought back, who'd won. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Bella moved into a new apartment 2 blocks from mine. It was a sunny one-bedroom with hardwood floors and big windows that let in morning light. She'd furnished it herself, choosing everything from the couch to the curtains, making decisions without having to ask anyone's permission or worry about someone's reaction. "I forgot what it felt like to just pick something because I liked it," she told me the day she moved in, without calculating whether it would make Dylan angry or if it was worth the argument. I helped her hang pictures on the walls, photographs of her with Caroline, with me, with friends from college she'd reconnected with. No photos of Dylan, no reminders of those 8 months, except the lessons she'd learned and the strength she'd discovered. Caroline came over most weekends now. The 3 of us, 3 generations of Thornfield women, would have dinner together and talk. Really talk, in ways we never had before. About our failures and our fears. About the patterns we'd repeated without meaning to. About how we were going to do better going forward. One Saturday evening, Caroline brought up something that had been bothering her. "Mom, I need to tell you about something that happened when I was 22. Something I never told you about because I didn't think you'd understand." She told me about her college boyfriend, about how he'd been controlling and manipulative, about the one time he'd pushed her during an argument, leaving bruises on her arms, about how she'd stayed for another 6 months after that, making excuses, trying to fix him, until her roommate finally convinced her to leave. "I wanted to tell you so many times," she said, tears in her eyes. "But you were always so busy with work, and when you were home, you seemed so distant, like you were there physically but your mind was somewhere else. I didn't think you'd care. Or worse, I thought you'd tell me I was being weak or dramatic." The words hurt because they were true. I had been distant. I had prioritized work over everything else, and my daughter had suffered in silence because I'd never created a space where she felt safe telling me the truth. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it with every part of me. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you, that I made you feel like you couldn't come to me. That's on me, not on you." "I know you were dealing with your own stuff," Caroline said. "Your marriage falling apart, Grandpa's cancer, building your career. I understand it better now as an adult, but as a kid, all I knew was that my mom was never really present." Bella reached across the table and took both our hands. "Maybe we can stop the cycle here, the 3 of us. Maybe we can be honest with each other in ways previous generations couldn't." She was right. We couldn't change the past, but we could change the pattern going forward. Patricia Bennett, now Patricia Morrison, having reclaimed her maiden name, became an unexpected ally and friend. She used part of her divorce settlement to rent a small studio apartment near Beacon Hill and enrolled in community college courses. At 57, she was learning to use computers and taking business classes and discovering who she was outside of being Harrison's wife. "I lost 35 years, she told me one afternoon when we met for coffee. "But I have hopefully 20 or 30 more ahead of me. That's enough time to build a new life." She'd also started volunteering at the women's shelter where I served on the board. Her story, wealthy, educated, trapped in an abusive marriage for decades, resonated with women who thought domestic violence only happened to poor people or people without resources. She showed them that abuse didn't discriminate by income level or zip code. Dylan moved out of state after completing his court-mandated treatment program. Last I heard, he was working at a financial firm in Chicago. Part of his plea agreement included continued therapy and regular check-ins with a probation officer. I hoped he was actually doing the work to change, but I didn't particularly care as long as he stayed far away from Bella. Harrison lost everything that mattered to him. He was asked to resign from 3 different boards. His country club membership was quietly revoked. The men who'd been his friends for decades suddenly became too busy to return his calls. In the social circles he'd valued so much, he became toxic. The man who'd enabled his son's violence, who'd abused his own wife for years. I ran into him once, about 5 months after everything ended, at a fundraising gala I couldn't get out of attending. He was there alone, looking older and smaller than I remembered. When our eyes met across the room, he turned and walked the other way. Good. Let him live with the consequences of his choices. Let him understand what it felt like to be powerless. The merger I'd been working on when Bella called that Tuesday afternoon eventually went through. My company successfully expanded into 3 new states. The deal was worth $47 million, and it should have been one of the proudest moments of my career. But when they offered me a promotion to Chief Operating Officer, I turned it down. Jennifer nearly fell out of her chair when I told her, "Mrs. Thornfield, this is everything you've been working toward. Why would you refuse?" "Because I'm 60 years old," I said. "Because I spent 40 years building a career at the expense of my family. And because I finally learned that success isn't measured in merger values or job titles." I didn't retire completely. I stayed on as a senior consultant, working part-time, advising on major deals, but not living at the office anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I had balance, time for family dinners and weekend visits, and actually being present for the people who mattered. Bella thrived in her new life. Her marketing career took off. She got promoted to senior manager and was leading campaigns for major clients. She started dating again, cautiously, and I watched her set healthy boundaries and walk away from anyone who showed even the slightest red flag of controlling behavior. But the biggest surprise came 7 months after the divorce, when Bella sat me down and told me something I'd suspected but hadn't asked about. "Grandma, I'm pregnant." My heart stopped. "Dylan?" "Yes. I found out right before I left him. I couldn't bring myself to tell him because I was so afraid of what it would mean, being tied to him forever, him having power over me through our child." She looked down at her hands. "I almost didn't keep the pregnancy because of that. But then I realized, this baby is mine, not his, mine, and I'm strong enough to raise a child on my own." "You won't be on your own," I said firmly. "You'll have me. You'll have your mother. You'll have Patricia and Marcus and everyone who helped you escape. You'll have an entire support system." She started crying. "I'm scared. What if I mess up? What if I'm not a good mother?" "You'll be an amazing mother. You're strong and brave, and you broke a cycle that could have continued for generations. Your child is lucky to have you." Margaret Caroline Morrison, named after me and her mother, was born on a sunny May morning. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, with green eyes like Bella's and a full head of dark hair. When the nurse placed her in my arms for the first time, I looked down at this tiny new life and made a promise. I promised I would be present. I promised I would break the patterns that had defined my own motherhood. I promised that this little girl would grow up knowing she was loved and valued and never, ever disposable. Caroline stood beside me, looking at her first grandchild with wonder. Bella was exhausted, but glowing in the hospital bed. The 3 of us had come so far in less than a year. We'd faced darkness and trauma and pain, and we'd come through it together. "She's perfect," Caroline whispered. "She is," I agreed. Bella looked at us, at her daughter, at the family that had fought so hard to protect her. "Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For helping me find my strength. For showing me what it means to fight back." "You saved yourself," I told her. "You made the call. You asked for help. You had the courage to leave. We just provided the tools." But the truth was, Bella had saved me too. She'd given me a reason to finally be the person I should have been all along. Not the distant, career-obsessed woman who missed her daughter's childhood and her husband's last years, but someone who understood that real power wasn't about money or titles or corner offices. Real power was standing between someone you loved and the person trying to hurt them. Real power was using your resources to protect the vulnerable. Real power was breaking cycles and building something better for the next generation. As I sat in that hospital room, holding my great-granddaughter, with my daughter and granddaughter beside me, I finally understood what Richard had tried to tell me before he died. I'd never really been there. I'd been physically present, but emotionally absent, always thinking about the next deal, the next meeting, the next achievement. But I was here now, fully, completely, present in this moment. And I would stay present for every moment that mattered from now on. Margaret Caroline opened her eyes and looked directly at me. She was only hours old, but something in her gaze felt ancient and knowing, like she was seeing straight into my soul and finding me worthy. "Welcome to the family, little one," I whispered. "We've been waiting for you, and I promise you this, you'll grow up knowing that the women in your family are strong, that we protect each other, that we don't accept being hurt or controlled or diminished, and that when someone tries to hurt one of us, all of us come back with everything we have." Bella reached out and took my hand. Caroline took her other hand. 3 generations connected, with a 4th just beginning her journey. We'd been through hell, but we'd come through it together, stronger, wiser, united by something deeper than blood, by the choice to break patterns, to demand better, to refuse to accept that violence and control were just how things were. That Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang and Bella's broken voice came through asking for help, that was the moment everything changed. Not just for her, but for all of us. It was the moment I finally learned what really mattered. And I'd spent every day since then making sure I never forgot it.